CRO-AM Connections, connecting with Croatian-Americans through conversation and events to share our culture. Today on our show, we have Nikola Metes, Vice President of the Association of Croatian-American Professionals, and he is a member delegate to the NFCA from Chicago, Illinois. Thank you all for joining us today, and dobro nam došli. Today we're having a conversation with Nikola Metes, Vice President of the Association of Croatian-American Professionals, ACAP, and a member delegate to the National Federation of Croatian-Americans Cultural Foundation. Nikola is talking to us from Chicago, Illinois today. Welcome, Nikola.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. Dobro večer. Good evening, everybody, and very happy to be here.
Yeah, dobro večer. You're going to help me brush up on my Croatian, Nikola. You don't know it yet, but that's what you're going to help me do.
Sure.
So funny story. We met at the NFCA annual meeting. I can't remember if we were getting coffee or lunch or whatever, but it was a small chat. I thought you're, a pretty cool guy and, probably run into you somewhere down the road. But lo and behold, like a week and a half ago, we were at the CFU Ski Fest, and you were standing in a room for an hour. And I kept saying to my wife, Heather, I know that guy. And you walked over and you're like, hey. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Nikola. And so we got to talking. And I think after a drink or so, I told you about, hey, you got a really good story. I'd like to get you on my podcast. And you're like, you got a podcast? I'm like, yeah, how could you not know we're as big as Joe Rogan is? It's like, geez, come on. And no. Obviously we're not, but you got a really great story, and thank you for agreeing to come talk to us tonight about your history, your roots, and all that good stuff. So thank you for doing that. So there is three parts to this, Nikola. The first part is talking about your family heritage, your Croatian roots, where your family's from. The second part is to get into ACAP, a little bit about what that is, that organization, and your role in ACAP as vice president, and how you got started there. And then, we'll meander a little bit. I got some fun facts on you too, so I'd like to throw those in. And then the last part is really talking about either the vision for ACAP, where you see that going, or any personal aspirations you want to share, or events that are coming up. We're open to that, and then we'll just round it out. So let's dive in. Let's talk about your Croatian roots.
Definitely, and again, thanks for having us. It was great to meet you a couple months back. See you again just a couple weeks ago, and really thrilled to be here on the second biggest podcast after Joe Rogan.
We're getting there.
Yeah, it's good, and we'll try to help promote as much as we can on our side also.
Yeah.
So going back just to heritage, interesting story. Much nothing more special than anybody else's story, but kind of unique in a weird way. And I'm very proud of it because it's been quite a roller coaster ride in different aspects, but it brought a lot of good things to my life. I was born in the States. Spent my early childhood here up until I was about 11, and then, very contrary to movement of people, I guess in those ages, a lot of people were leaving Croatia, kind of going towards Western countries. Whereas my story and the way my parents decided is they moved us back as a family to Croatia. Much like any immigrant wish, living here for decades. Yeah. And my mom's family was here from the 60s. So, independent Croatia came, and, it was a dream come true for them. So, 1998, I was 11. I have a younger sister. She was 7. And we moved back to Croatia. And just to, spice up the details, we didn't move back to Zagreb as the capital city. We didn't move back to, the regional capital. We're, from Slavonia, mostly on my dad's side. So we didn't go to Osijek. We didn't even go to a small town. We went back to my dad's village.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so just to kind of illustrate the dynamics. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so not too big of a city, but definitely huge
It's
compared
big.
to, anything in Croatia, especially.
Yeah.
So overnight, so from, that kind of, big metropolitan type of surrounding, very suburbia, American lifestyle, everything, is great, just like in the movies. Overnight, going back to a small, tiny village, just, a few thousand souls all together. And I'll tell you one thing, it's a pretty big change when you're a kid, and overnight,
Yeah.
it's, from hanging out with friends here and, whatever was popular back in the day, laser tag, roller skating arenas. I remember bowling, collecting baseball cards, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Video games were just kind of kicking out. That was the time of Sega too, so pre PlayStation and Xbox and all that. And then we get to the
Yeah, you're going back a little bit on the Sega there. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm not much of a gamer, so that's
Yeah.
the last one I had. But that was the time, right? Late '90s,
Yeah.
and we get to my village. It's called Cerna. It's a small village between Vinkovci and Županja, so the very far east of Croatia. It's Vukovarsko-Srijemska Županija, the county. Very close to the border with Serbia, and then very close to the border with Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's kind of the very corner of the country. And as I mentioned, yeah, big change. This is 1998, so not too long after the war finished. Peaceful reintegration of Vukovar in that area was happening then. But point is, a lot of things were still fresh out of the war. So that was my first kind of my memories I have from there. Just blown up buildings, shrapnel holes everywhere. Destroyed roads, mine signs everywhere we went and stuff like that. And, I was old enough and to kind of remember all this and think, all right, this is, apparently not safe. And, wow, what happened here? But then just to illustrate, what, the kids and I'm talking about my family members and great friends and, us in the village. So from all the cool things I was saying that I was doing in Cleveland with my buddies, overnight, the kids over there didn't have much, so I had to adjust, so from playing whatever video games and all those things, it was a sudden change to, playing with, chickens and pigs in the backyard, getting all muddy. I remember like a soccer ball was the thing, in Cleveland I had 15 in my garage, used 2 here, like it was 1 and there was, 50 of us kids running after it. And it was the thing. And, just to conclude, like, big changes. But one thing that, I remember, vividly, it really struck with me is, I thought I was happy as a kid over there, and I was in Cleveland, everything was good, of course. And I thought all these things were important and, that this kind of contributes to that happiness. And then, you get over there, again, kids have not that much, again, fresh out of the war and stuff like that, but equally happy. And, that was a big eye opener. It's like, all right, so like adjusting perspectives, trying to figure out, all right, what's, how come it works here and there, and, understanding, again, how to fit in, assimilate, and be equally happy over there without all the things that you thought were important, overnight. So, pretty big awakening call at quite a young age. And then, that was kind of the foundation laying for all the good things that came after. We spent 1 year at the village where I went to 6th grade. That's also tricky when you move back, and there's a lot of examples of other families that moved back in those years. And what the faculty would recommend for cases like that would that you would put the kids back 1 year in school because of cultural differences, because of different style of schooling curriculums, and most importantly because of the language barrier.
Were you fluent in Croatian when you went back?
I was, luckily, and
Okay.
growing up in Cleveland, my mom, she would teach Croatian at the Croatian school as part of the Croatian Hall in Eastlake, Ohio. We spoke Croatian, of course, at home. It was the first language I remember and I recall speaking. But again, it's diaspora Croatian, right? So you speak it, you can understand, you can get away, but grammatically, it's not as correct as it should be.
And they tell you.
Oh, when you get there, they tell you. Yeah, and it's a big thing over there. And again, it wasn't easy. You're all proud because you're in this new surrounding, you're in this village. You're whatever going to school, and you're trying to kind of up your game and not impress everybody, but just show that hey, you're you're cool, and then raise my hands, try to answer questions from teachers and stuff like that. But it would all be in this broken Croatian, right? I'd miss some of the grammatical rules, the padaji, and it's a very complex language, we all know. So me all proud, lifting my hand, trying to, answer a question, even though I knew the answer. But, the way it would come out, it would just be, a laughing stock from the rest of the class. Ha ha ha! You said something, whatever. You got some tense wrong or some verb or something, and then it's not easy at the time. But hey, all right, you learn to sharpen your ear. Get the grammatics set in. And even if you ask me now, like the Croatian I learned there, and the English I retained from just living here, like if you were to ask me grammatical rules, I probably couldn't write down either or. Now it's all by ear, trying to figure out, how they speak, listen what they're saying, kind of relate, recall. So yeah, that's an interesting,
Yeah, I could imagine. I remember just a quick. I think my second time I went back was in '96. First time I was in '82, and in '96 when I went back, you talked about the after the war. There were still, I think, people were still feeling the war, especially family. We're in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you saw the buildings that still had the pockmarks, the buildings that weren't rebuilt. And so I can't imagine you as an 11-year-old having to go back and see that. It's a probably traumatic a little bit, but also confusing maybe as well, trying to figure this out because you didn't have to live through that, but now you are living in it. So that's an interesting time period. And then on the language, they do. It's not like they're trying to be mean to you. I mean, kids are kids, right? All the kids make fun of you, right? But I always get a trip out of their cousins, the younger cousins, because they learn the 3 languages, right? Obviously Croatian, English, but then they can pick up a 3rd language if they wanted to. And they want to help you, but also they think it's funny the way you say stuff, right? It's just like, they're brutal. They're just like,
Certainly. It's, it goes all the way to the extent of, I had a very thick American English accent, and, in school over there, they teach a very British focused type of English and pronunciation and all. And then, even that was funny. So, then I'm like, all right, I'm kind of sick of all this, laughing at. So then I started tailoring my English to make it really sound as much, Britishy and kind of, formal in a weird way. And, I don't know, a great example would be, the word advertisement here, totally fine, right? That's how we say it. But over there, it's, I would say, they would laugh. No, you must say advertisement, and it's weird stuff. But it's all right, you want to fit in. So I really brushed up on my British English, which is, I guess that's an unexpected benefit I got.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. So how'd you make your way back? Like, how did you get back to? Did you come back to Chicago? What was your travels back to the States?
Sure. So the journey is, from that village, we went to then the local town of Vinkovci. That's where I went to high school, gymnasium, whole different type of, high schooling experience compared to US, but, nevertheless also very great and beneficial. Then I went to Zagreb for college, undergrad, stayed there a couple of years and worked. And then 2015 is when I decided, again, recalling a lot of things from my youth, and, I was 11 at the time. So I remember quite a bit of growing up here and, again, pros and cons to both sides and all. And, I always had this itch of, kind of coming back to the States, getting some corporate America experience. The big wish of mine was to complete my graduate studies here also. So 2015 is when I made the call. And then the whole question was, where am I going to go? I grew up in Cleveland. Should I go back there? Should I go somewhere else, somewhere new, get some new experiences? And we had a family in California. My mom's sister, and she moved out there a couple of decades ago. So cousins and a lot of friends there. And I figured, all right, for the career I want to focus in, which is tied to marketing and marketing technology, a little bit of Silicon Valley probably sounds good. So that's where I moved. I was there for about 3.5 years. All along the peninsula, live close to all the tech giants, try to make my way into, some of these bigger companies, get into a software company, Lived there, lived in San Francisco a little bit. It was a great experience. But since I was a Midwest kid and grew up there, the itch for this area, I figured, meant a lot more to me. And then 2018, I was like, all right, I'm going back to the Midwest. Again, not sure will it be Cleveland, but what was important for me is that, again, it's a good city career-wise, which Chicago is for, marketing-focused careers. But most importantly, where is there a good Croatian community?
Yeah.
Where it's just, it's very high on my list, very important to be able to connect again with Croatians on a weekly, basis, multiple times. A lot of organizations that I can get involved to, contribute to. It's just me. I feel empty without it. And Chicago kind of pushes all those buttons, right? So came here, and ever since, kind of set anchor here. Love it. Very reminds me of Cleveland a lot. It's just times 10 in size, and the Croatian community here, again, very, very dynamic. A lot of good stuff happening all the time. Very welcoming. I had some acquaintances that I knew here. No distant relatives or anything like that I can, kind of shadow off. So really ground zero. And within a couple of months, I knew everybody, was well connected. And, I could safely say I consider, Chicago really, really home for now in terms of the States.
Yeah. It's a Croatian community. They're very welcoming, right? Especially of their own that if you're coming in, they're protective, right? Of when you're coming into their community, but they're also welcoming at the same time. And it's good to hear that they, Chicago's huge. Chicago, Cleveland, New York, all have Pittsburgh. All have these large historical Croatian communities, and they're fun. They're fun to be in as well. Those cities, those places too. But you went to school at Loyola. Is that where you did your graduate studies, or what did you do at Loyola?
Correct. So at Loyola, I completed my MBA, Master of Business Administration. Moved here 2018. That was when I started my studies, and graduated then right when the pandemic kicked in, 2020. Yeah.
So you're the academic parent is has bled into your bloodline, right? It's what you're kind of doing all the way up through the MBA. Congrats to you, right? But you've also played a little football at Loyola. Is that true?
Correct. And this is a totally strange story. We're very out of the blue, but happy to share because it was also a lifelong wish. So I explained everything going back to Croatia and stuff. So, living over there, I missed out on some things here. And what I missed out is, American high school, lockers, proms, right? Varsity sports, all those, things from the movies here. And, it kind of stuck with me. And, again, I got a lot of good things over there that I'd never probably experienced if we stayed here. But anyway, this football thing, and, I've always been in sports, even in Croatia, much like any Croatian kid, soccer, then, advanced into track and field, athletics, played a lot of basketball, did boxing, did, a whole bunch of stuff. But football was always, it's a great sport, and, it's the essence of America and all. So here's me going in my MBA, and mind you, I wasn't young at the time, not young now either, but, MBA here, grad student, right? They publish, Loyola has a club team, club football, and now, club football is, it's interesting. Why? Because those are all the guys that couldn't make, the D3 ones, right? So they play high school ball. They're probably still good. They're probably a little frustrated that they didn't make it, further. So it's really intense and less regulated. So, it's pretty brutal. But anyway, they published how they have open trial. It's kind of like a combine thing. It was one of those beginning of semester fairs and whatever. And, I came up to the table, was talking to the coaches, I'm like, hey guys, I'm kind of interested, but there's one problem. I'm a grad student and I'm, I don't know, 32 at the time, is that okay? And, they're laughing because there were some coaches that were younger than me. And they're like, yeah, just come to the combine. If you pass, whatever the tests and, some of those drills, why not? So went there, again, been training all my life. So, I did a couple of drills pretty good, ranked pretty pretty decently compared to guys that were 12 years younger than me and stuff like that. And, they came up, they're like, you can make the team if you want. You can't get a scholarship or anything, but if you're in, you're in. And I was like, all right. And that's how the football thing started. So I played 2 seasons of this club football. We played this Midwestern division, traveled to a couple states, played a couple bigger colleges. Even some of the big division schools had club teams. So, like this league also had Ohio State and Michigan State, their club teams, of course. So it was fun to kind of get that aspect. And, so finally got to play this sport at 30. I was on the line with some kids, again, that were 12, 13, 14. And the youngest kid was 15 years, I remember at the time. He was like 18-ish, whatever. I was in the second season, my 33. I was the second oldest player in that league. And the only older guy was a kicker. So I was the oldest guy on the field, playing and actually getting hit. But wouldn't change the experience for anything. It was great, it was great to experience it.
I didn't realize that those larger universities has club teams like that. I don't wonder if it's like a Midwest thing. I didn't realize that.
They do, and a lot of much less funds go into it, and we even had a supplement and pay some stuff. But it was great because you still see the passion that people have. Again, some kids played pretty good in high school and wanted to continue and all. And Loyola's a big basketball school, so that's kind of the flagship. But I was really happy that I had this opportunity to finally do it. And again, it was great. It came with its
and you won a championship, right? You can put that on your CV too, right? Was it 2019? You guys won. What was the championship?
We did 2019 Great Lakes West. So we won that division, which was great. The first season we weren't so good, and then we kind of, upped the ante as much as possible. We really took it serious second season, and so 2018 we were good. 2019 we won the championship. That was great. It's a small little trophy. We didn't get any rings or any stuff like that, but it was a great. I don't know, just a great way to end that episode there, and and I can attest to all the good players when they play that last game, and it's emotional, man. Like I didn't play long at all, but it was like wow, to end it that way, and it was something.
That's pretty cool because then you got that experience. Not only did you get to play football, but you actually won like a champion. That's pretty cool. It doesn't matter what level it is. It's still pretty cool to be on that team, a championship team. So congrats.
Certainly, thank you.
Well, let's get into ACAP and your role there. So give us a little bit of what ACAP is and your role and how you got involved in it.
Sure. So ACAP is the Association of Croatian-American Professionals. It's a nonprofit organization that's going into its 11th year now. What the mission and vision is to identify and connect Croatian-Americans, Croatians, and actually any friends of Croatia in a business networking type of environment. This is kind of modeled after other successful diaspora initiatives. Think of the Irish, think of the Jewish type of communities and all, where they connect regardless of where they're located, or if they're in different countries. And the idea is very fresh and very interesting, and it appeals to wide masses. I said we're going into our 11th year, which is a good sign because, we made the make or break point. There's been great associations and organizations, for different Croatian initiatives, springing up and down through these last 30 years. And then, they kind of, have a steep curve and then, fall down or disappear really quickly. We somehow survived. We're growing organically in terms of membership, in terms of chapter, in terms of our general exposure and visibility and, partnerships that we have now with different organizations here and then in the homeland in Croatia. It's a great type of, group of people. I've been with it for close to 10 years. It's about 9 now. I started off as soon as I got to Silicon Valley. That's when they kind of kicked off, their first initial conference. It took place in DC. And then the chapter model kind of sprung out after that. And while I was there, I helped establish the Silicon Valley chapter. Got into the national level. I served as secretary for good 5 years. Now currently in the role of vice president for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, sorry. And, have really tried to continue working on different initiatives. And we've, the good thing about ACAP is, when the organization started, the idea was, let's just identify, connect people. No big promises, no big goals, because, who could even write them down and, and kind of get us in that direction. But, the real fruit of the organization is the good things that happen after you connect people or identify, connect people. Then, people of similar backgrounds, similar professions, similar expertise come together, work on, matters of common or, mutual concern, and, spring into different initiatives, task forces, and things like that. And, I can give a couple good examples. Our biggest, largest, and most active body is called the Medical Tourism, Task Force. Now it's a committee. And, there's hundreds of members there, different people working in healthcare systems, doctors, scientists, and, they're working on different symposiums, ideas, opening, different programs of medical tourism in Croatia. Again, the idea is always somehow to connect, back to some benefits for Croatia, cancer research initiatives, centers, lots of funds. We have a second great body and program that's called the Domovina Birthright program, where, we try to get Croatian descendants, so think third, fourth, fifth generation from all over the world, take them on a 2-week trip back to Croatia so they can reconnect with their roots, have classes at universities of Croatian history and language, visit, companies, visit all the different regions, all the cities, historical sites, get them to kind of, be more acquainted, hopefully come more often, who knows, maybe, one day invest or buy some property in Croatia, maybe fall in love, get married, have kids, but the idea is to obtain, the connection with which they'll, probably revisit their roots, apply for Croatian citizenship, kind of contribute to that issue that we have, with the demographic numbers going down. We work on different things, different education synitiatives, trying to figure out a way to consolidate Croatian school curriculums here in the U.S., so that schools are, more synchronized in what they teach and better teaching methodologies. And, through all of this, then we got the interest of, ministries and government state agencies back home, and they really look at us as, a partner in high regards, and, they want to invest. They consider us, great allies and ambassadors as boots on the ground within the local communities here. Within the states, as I mentioned, we are a chapter system. We have about 10 active chapters now. We have 4 or 5 in the pipeline, covering all of the continental U.S. mostly right now. To these conferences every year, it's our flagship thing. We've had, 10 of them. The 10th is coming up this year. We're looking to, expand. We have an international chapter in Zagreb, again, boots on the ground in the homeland. So anyway, from a small idea of just identifying and connecting people, it has grown to what it is now. Our community is about, almost 3,000 people big. We took it to another level in terms of the tech ecosystem now. We launched the new gated community, so think kind of like a private Croatian LinkedIn, similar functionality. And we even launched our own app, which is, a big thing just for ease of use and kind of get people in the motion of checking that app daily to see, much like you check a Facebook and an Instagram of what's going on with friends and family in the community here, and people can post, business related things if they're hiring or if they're looking for a certain service or product expertise, or, the point is connect and keeping people, together on this Croatian heritage note.
Yeah, a lot of great programs, and you're right. The Croatian, we see the reach out from Croatian government in recognition of ACAP and the good work that ACAP's doing, and that partnership is important because it goes both ways, right? You want to like the Birthright. I think that's a newer program, though, right? When did Birthright start? A couple of years ago.
So Birthright Domovina, we had it initialized prior to the pandemic, and we actually had two editions happen before the break, right? And then now it evolved into the whole Birthright movement, and it's really growing great. I can confirm now this year we've had record numbers of applicants from a record number of countries where Croatians are
Oh, wow.
living in. We're even getting partnerships with other Croatian organizations from different countries who, love the program, love the forum, want to sponsor it in different ways, and continue to amplify and promote it in their local areas. So it's really growing into this widespread movement, which is, again, great. Nobody thought of, this could be possible at the time. Within ACAP, we also have ACAP Foundation, which is, focused on, the idea was, again, to be focused on the development of, young people and through scholarships and internships and things like that. And then, it had a pivot, at the time of the earthquakes, where we did quite a bit of fundraising. Again, not intentionally, but that's, the way things were unfolding at the time. And we raised a lot of funds, but through that whole initiative, we really got, the attention of similar counterparts, Croatian associations throughout the world. And we kind of joined forces in this alliance called One Croatia, where, we're all connected. We still, have regular calls. And the idea, again, is just that we're all, in sync and, cross collaboration, cross supporting as much as possible. Again, we all know the issue. There's not many Croatians, back home in the world too. It'd be a shame for us not to all connect and contribute as much as we can to one another.
Yeah, going back to that territorial, we're really good about if you're new or you're Croatian, you're coming into our community, we're going to welcome you, but we're also very proud of our territory. And so we're not very open sometimes. And we're all Croatians, right? It doesn't matter what generation you are, we're all Croatians. And if we just realize that we're all trying to do the same thing and embrace that and see how we can work together, I think that we become a stronger community in that regards. And sometimes it's just old school thinking, right? Some people are just set in their ways, and that's okay too. But it's okay to think differently and change up and try to connect and reconnect and just keep connecting, right? That's the point of this, right? So when you talk about, there's the ACAP is obviously Croatian-Americans, but when you talk about globally, then, or do you see, we're starting to get into the latter part of it, and I'm sorry I'm going this way, but it's my show. I can go anywhere I want. Do you see a global organization then potentially with ACAP? Is that maybe a vision, or what is the vision? Let me just ask you that.
That's really a good question. Again, I don't think, again, when we started that, at this point, anybody thought we'd be where we are right now. And, I'm going back to that notion that the idea is apparently fresh and works, again, with wide masses of Croatians wherever they're located, and I can give you an example of just 3 subgroups of, the Croatians that are like 4th generation, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whose ancestors were the ones that left, 1800s, early 1900s. So they're one subgroup. Then you'll have, the migration group from, after World War II, those years, right? And then you'll have this new group of Croatians that, emigrated within the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And these 3 groups sometimes coexist in the same area, but have no contact, no support or collaboration between one another. And then ACAP kind of, brings them all together. So, I think this is great. And we're actually seeing this replicate on a global scale, but not from our intention. And, can it grow into something global? Maybe. I mean, again, we're a volunteer organization.
Yeah.
We're all doing this, pure heart, from whatever time and, energy and resources we have left. But, I got great examples of, things that were modeled after ACAP. So, we're the Association of Croatian-American Professionals based here in the States. And then, within the last year and a half, there's an association that got founded in the UK, United Kingdom, called the Association of Croatian British Professionals. Again, working, in the same way to identify Croatian professionals and, people of Croatian descent that are living in the UK and, getting them to connect. Because, again, that's a country where, there's maybe not pre-established organizations that they can shadow off of. So, ACAP, again, very fresh, very interesting, very very inspiring to wide masses, and it's working. And, I was just in London meeting with them, and, they got, great numbers as of now, and, also looking to kind of spread it out in a chapter system and, involve people that are up in Manchester and Liverpool. I mean, just to think that, there's Croatians in all these cities around. Also, there's an initiative for a same counterpart in Sweden. So it would be ACSP, Association of Croatian Swedish Professionals. So, this is apparently replicating, which is a good sign that, again, the idea is fresh, it's working, that hopefully we're doing a good job, and, people maybe have been to our conferences and events and seen, the great empowerment that it brings, and, just the showcasing of Croatian excellence that we have in multiple fields that we don't even know about. So, that I think is, it's a big kicker for everyone. And, we're definitely here for the journey to help support this, replicate wherever it can. We have our counterparts in Canada, Croatian Canadian Chamber of Commerce, with whom we're, great relations from the very beginning, and they come and cross support and same, both ways. And, this is great. So these big countries with lots of Croatian descendants there coming together, again, with the same goal of, identifying, connecting, working on issues or, initiatives of mutual interest and concern, and, figuring out a way how it can benefit them wherever they're located and wherever they're living. And then again, also somehow related to, some benefit in the homeland. So, it's a good thing. And, I think it's healthy, and, really hoping for the best that, things like this, whatever they're called or whatever they're formulated, but if they're doing something in this direction, I think it's a win for us as just a nation.
So ACAP. So how can folks sign up? Do they just go to acap.org, look for a local chapter? How does, if somebody's interested in ACAP as a professional, and let me ask, are there different levels of professional? Like sometimes there's a 40 under 40, or, there's different levels of chapters. Is that part of the organizational structure, or is it just you belong to a chapter and then you're part of the national organization? How does that work?
So it's really not defined, that strictly. It's open to anybody. The name might be a little deceiving, professionals. People think if they're not in, big corporate jobs that, that's not. Mm-hmm. But no, it's, again, open to anybody that, wants to contribute in this way. And, anybody that does any type of, great work on the local level, small, medium businesses and, trades and whatever the case may be. Because, again, the idea is that, ACAP is the meeting spot for, two things. Either you come to offer something, your expertise, your services, your products, or you're looking for expertise, services, and products. So it transcends, levels and hierarchies and industries and all that. So, if somebody is interested to, again, learn more about ACAP and see some of the things that we've done, easiest is to go to our website. It's www.croampro.com. And then, there's a simple sign-up process there. And then when they sign up, they can choose. We have two levels of membership, just kind of standard general membership, and then student membership for those that are still completing their studies. And if they're living close to an active chapter, they can set a chapter as their primary location, and then that they'll hear more about activities from that local chapter, and can be part of that local subgroup. And our chapters are very interesting and very different, depending on where they're located, because every community is a little different and meets in different ways and frequencies and cadences, and is maybe focused in cities that are really particular in certain industries. And these are all great hotspots for us, again, to combine for some of our national initiatives and things. But yeah, for people, they can definitely find a local group that they're interested. Again, we're covered all sides of the states right now. So, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, down to the South. Got a couple new initiatives in some smaller regions and states and cities that maybe don't have traditional Croatian organizations. So, it's very exciting. We're looking forward to that. But even if they don't have anything close, they're part of ACAP National. They can follow news and updates from different chapters. If they're traveling, they can see. I mentioned that app. We have this cool functionality where there's an actual live map which will show you where members are located. So, for example, if you're going to a business trip in Houston, Texas, and, you open it up, you see, oh, look, there's two ACAP members here living in Houston, and, you can reach out to them, message, possibly meet. Again, but the point is, what are the chances and odds that you would come across that person, anywhere? So we're trying to be that cool meeting spot, that simple meeting spot for Croatian-Americans here in the States. But again, as you see, it transcended, cross borders already.
So I have a suggestion because I'm a foodie. We need to make sure all the Croatian restaurants sign up into the app. So every time I travel anywhere, nationally or internationally, I can find a Croatian restaurant so I can just stop in and have maybe cevapi or something, burek, something, I don't know.
That's actually a really good recommendation because whenever you meet anybody coming into town, that's like the second question that they always ask. Whatever something,
Right.
and then hey, is there any Croatian restaurants here? Can we get some chop or
Yeah.
something? So,
Yeah.
like
But if I wanted to start a chapter, do I just reach out to you guys, the executive committee, and say, hey, is there a process, or what do you guys look for a chapter? What makes a chapter? Just curious on that.
certainly, and we encourage it again in areas definitely where we don't have it, or where maybe it's too far for the nearest chapter that's already established. But we have a simple process. We have a chapter development membership committee. We roll up a simple pre-flight checklist and kind of short list of criteria. The prerequisite would be to have a small critical mass, and critical mass would be 15-ish to 20 people that are interested, that live in the local metropolitan area, whatever city it is where this chapter wants to get established. And then they'll meet. We have a lot of resources. We have chapter resource center with things that we try to really make it easier for chapters to get underway and onboarded, and marketing assets, and meeting structures and ideas for events and whatnot. And we'll come down, we'll also help as much as we can. And then at some point the chapter gets formalized. We do have paperworks that are in sync with our national bylaws, chapter affiliate agreements, fiscal responsibility, things like that, where the chapter institutionalizes, gets a chapter board, gets goes through an election process, has a few roles dedicated, so a president, a secretary, treasurer. The chapter boards can be bigger or smaller. We allow for flexibility. Just the idea is, again, to get as many people involved that have the time and the will and the energy to contribute. And then they'll set their goals for the year. Some chapters meet very often, very frequently. Some have just a couple events through the year, and the events vastly different. This is a good thing, because there's no cookie cutter format that works equally in each city. Something here in Chicago won't work necessarily in Baltimore or any other place. But we've had great examples. Some take it very formally. You'll have guest speakers and sit down formal dinners and things like that. Other chapters will meet just regularly at more informal surroundings, bars, bowling alleys, whatever, have kind of fun social activities, heritage nights, cross supporting with other local events that take place within those communities. And you can get really creative there in terms of what's going on. And then the chapters cross collaborate. You sync. Well, maybe if it's close visits to other ones, we'll go visit a neighboring chapter. They'll come back. They'll work maybe on events together. We have virtual events also. Even though people really prefer the in-person ones, and that's really kind of the bread and butter, and we can all attest to that. That it's always nice to meet people in person, and the energy is just different. So we try to encourage as many as in-person events as possible. And in the meantime, now that tech meeting spot has been updated, and that's 24/7, and you can really stay involved and connected just constantly now, nonstop. So
yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a lot there. Appreciate you for sharing that. I do want to take a little turn though, Nikola. It seems like you have this entrepreneurial spirit in you. You've traveled a bit. You've been on coasts and Midwests. You played football while doing your MBA. But I found this bit. I need you to talk to me about this a little bit. I think it's pretty cool. So you founded a Croatian music festival, and I think it's called the Knockout Snow Festival. So you got to share. What was the vision? How did you do this? And I think you even franchised it, if I got it correctly. So tell me, share the fun facts.
Sure, and thanks for bringing this up. It's just great to recall. That was a big part of my life. This is while I was living in Croatia, straight out of college, my first job. I worked for a big, I'd say tourism and events management corporation, pretty big at the time in Zagreb, with regional offices, and in the neighboring countries also. And we did a lot of like massive student trips. So I think kind of an equivalent to spring breaks here. They're called Absolventska over there. and different initiatives like that. And then we did a lot of winter programs. And I'm an avid winter skier, winter sports type of guy. Been in music my whole life and too. So they're two great passions of mine. And when you couple that with seeing that, hey, we got these big numbers of people that are going to different places. We did a lot of trips and all around Europe and in Greece and Spain, and then the French Alps for these winter trips and all. I crafted this crazy idea at the time. I was like, hey, let's turn this into a music festival. Let's take everything, and what I mean by everything is all of our logistics from Croatia. So all of our stage, audiovisual production, all of our food and beverage. The whole business plan. Kind of drew out everything. We're going to need these sponsors and stuff like this, and all of our merchandise and everything, and let's go through this big event, big Croatian event outside of Croatia. And 2011 was our first edition, where we had close to 2,000 people in a small ski resort in France.
Wow.
We named it Knockout Snow Festival because it knocks you out how great it was. Yeah. And what we did is we featured bands from Croatia. We had the idea. It's a 7-day trip, 6 nights. So registrants or attendees of this festival have skiing and other activities per the day, and then at night they get to see their favorite bands in a private concert surrounding. First couple editions we even took a big tent from Croatia where we fit them all. Logistically it was a big movement at the time, was, and probably still, but definitely then it was the biggest Croatian event outside of Croatia, apart from Croatians attending like a game at a World Cup or whatever. And it proved to be pretty successful. We grew, at the time, I was co-founder and project head for 5 years. We grew to about 2,800, 900 people. More bands. We even had, term after term, so week after week, a couple of years, and proved to be pretty successful. We gathered interest from some of the local neighboring countries, and it was an opportunity to kind of sell the model and franchise it, so they have their own editions of Knockout Snow Festival, different artists and things like that, but same idea, take everything somewhere, throw it, this great event, with fun activities and music for everybody, and it exists even to this day. 2015, as I mentioned, I came back to the States, went a different way, but still definitely secondarily involved, through support and all. They continue to do so in France. The festival moved throughout the years. There were a couple editions that were in Switzerland also. And it was a great project at the time. I was, again, very young, straight out of college, first entrepreneurial venture. But yeah, lots of good things came for that too.
That's pretty cool. That's fun. It sounds like a lot of fun, man. Not just creating it, but just the experience of it, right? It sounds like a lot of fun.
Certainly.
Well, the last part, I know we got into the vision part of it a little bit, but personally, aspirations, vision for ACAP, anything you want to add, or events coming up that you want to plug, just anything you want to wrap up with?
Certainly. I mean, I can knock ACAP maybe first. We're, again, working, tirelessly and daily, trying to see where our next edition of the flagship conference will be. We kind of have a standard time frame sometime in the fall. So, stay tuned. A lot of things will hopefully be published soon in relation to that. We're also looking at smaller events, some smaller road type circuit things. We'll choose a couple cities maybe throughout the years, doing very niche, smaller 1-day events, but very niche themed in terms of what's, what the local area is kind of focused on. So that's on the ACAP side. You'll see us cross-supporting as many Croatian associations and organizations as possible. Much like you met me and, we saw each other, I try to really attend, any Croatian event that happens in the state. It's very personal, to me, because it's just, I love seeing how many of us there are, and, meeting new people and hearing other stories. So, you'll probably see me at any other big events. In terms of initiatives, again, I try to contribute here locally as much as possible. I was, teaching kids Croatian school here. We got a couple soccer days throughout the week where we constantly connect. Very active. My local church parish on the board, and there's a Croatian cultural center here just down the street from me. So they always have interesting things, and I'm just bringing all this up because there's so many things good things happening. And if I have one aspiration that I can kind of pinpoint, it's I wish this continues and I wish this multiplies as big as it can get. More things happening, it's just more interesting. Everybody's lives are more richer that way. I could share a little tidbit. I have a little side idea that hopefully I'm trying to formalize soon enough, but and working on my background, and you've heard all these athletic experiences and stuff like that, but I like to get some sort of sporty initiative going on for us Croatians. I don't know, maybe like a run club or something like that, where it's free, it's peer led, it's meeting on a regular cadence and things like that. And then maybe we can do things where we go to different races, different cities around the states, and you can frame other events around that, get other organizations involved and stuff like that. So it's just getting the ball rolling, because things really multiply quite quick when the momentum kicks in. And again, Croatians, we know we're a little hard-headed. We're a little, tough to get, all the vices we have and things like that. But when we do things, we do it really good, and it's fun, and it's, so it's just getting to that point, and that's our pet peeve. That's, something that.
And we're competitive, and we hate to lose.
Certainly, and why not? I mean, why not touch on that always? We're really good competitors, which I think is it's a great virtue to have as as a nation.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, appreciate your time. It's been great having you on our podcast. Really, thank you for doing this. It was cool seeing you at Ski Fest, and sorry I didn't recognize you right away. It's just like kept saying, Heather, I know this guy. I'm glad you walked over and we continued the conversation. I'm glad we did that. I'm glad you came on tonight, Nikola.
Thank you, Marty. It was great seeing you, and thank you again for having me on this podcast. This is a great thing. Keep on doing it, and thanks for all you do, and looking forward to many more, times that we have to hang out together and get to, connect.
Yeah, we're looking for another time. We got to just find that event. We'll be there. Appreciate it, Nikola. So we're going to wrap up another episode, and just always want to say thank you, bona fide, to all of our CRO-AM followers for tuning in, and to Filthy 46 Productions for their editing and production expertise. So until next time, Živjeli Hrvati, veliki poz I Bog.
Hvala, pozdrav.
Catch our next episode, where we sit down for a conversation with Don Lagenfeld. He's an officer at Javor Inc., Svisveti Lodge 1, and the United CFU Lodges of Western PA. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and other podcast platforms, along with watching us on our YouTube channel or following us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks and appreciation to Nikola Metes for being our guest, Filthy 46 Productions, and as always, our CRO-AM followers.
Follow.